So, Stephen, welcome to CTO Confessions. It's great to have you on board, sir.
Hi, TJ. It's really great to be on the show.
It's great to have you. So, tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And who do you work for?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Stephen Cope. I'm CIO here at Astrak. I'm responsible for all things IT, digital, data. I joined the business around 6.5 years ago now. They were a very small family-run business. Um, we did, I think, 29 million pound revenue, mainly out the UK and Europe. Then we managed to get the business and scale the business to 55, 60, and private equity came in and bought the majority share. That was around 3 years ago now. And since then, we've been on an M&A journey and feels like we're taking over the world.
So, before we go into the kind of success of the company, I'm really curious around yourself and your journey. I'm always interested in how people get to positions that you're in now. What's your journey been like?
Well, before I joined Astrak, I was 14, 15 years in the energy industry. Everything from, I started out in sales originally, in telesales, believe it or not. Then I transitioned into the IT side because I was very technical. Then moved into data, reporting, analysis, working with the trade desk, so buying and selling energy. So that was really cool to see the other side of the energy world. Then the opportunity came up at Astrak to join them as their first analyst, and the opportunity was to build out the reporting suite and give them insights into their data that they never had before. I did very well in that space. They offered me a head of IT position. I turned it down originally. I was asked why. I presented to say, well, it would need to work like this and need to be structured like this. And they agreed. And that's basically how I become leading the IT and digital infrastructure at Astrak. Then when the private equity came in, they really liked that we had scalable tech stack. And they made me the offer to move up into a C-suite role.
Right. Oh, fascinating. There's something around how you've navigated this, because you kind of like started off from the ground and you kind of worked your way up. What's the, if the audience are probably listening to this, what's the essence of what you did? So maybe they can pick that up as a tip. What's the thing in the space that's kind of driven you? Is it just luck?
I think it's always been resourceful. I probably didn't learn that until late into my 20s, that just learn the important things, become a subject expert on the important thing, and be curious. So I've taken learning and development quite serious from the age 25, 26 onwards now. Whereas previously I didn't really have that education as my fundamental. I started work at an early age, and I worked myself into these positions. And it's more of being resourceful, seeing what you can do. I think the first test I had here at Astrak was that they had a software that wasn't integrated. Nobody's integrated it for 3 years. And I managed to do it in a day and a half. And that's just because I'm curious. I went away, learned how it works, learned how we could integrate it and make it work for us. And I think that maybe demonstrated how adaptable I was and how willing I was to actually go away and find solutions.
That's really interesting, because I know another Cope, Mr. Cope, that's got a very similar trait to you. He's got his beautiful curiosity where his curiosity kind of drives him into little corners and nooks and crannies, and he finds kind of like innovations or different ways of doing stuff. So I don't know, maybe it's a genetic thing. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because up to then, probably in my career, I didn't really appreciate that I was a problem solver or a solution person.
Wow.
But I really adapted into that role, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And so here you go, to the audience, I'm speaking to the audience, really get your curiosity turned up. It's a beautiful thing that we got as part of our humanity, and it's really fun to use, so use it out there. And it shows that you're engaged. Other people see that, don't they? They kind of think, well, he seems to be interested. Let's give him a go, type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's the key lesson is always be willing to learn. yeah, we only know what we know. And when we go to explain, when we go to find these learnings, we typically, we're building layers and skills, and knowledge. And that's really valuable, especially in the business space.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you didn't sound like you went through a traditional, going to university and then you kind of just got straight into work.
Yeah. So early on, grew up in quite a hectic um, family. My mum passed away when I was 14. So
Sorry to hear that.
that really changed my life. I was maybe not the perfect student or straight A student, but up until that point, I was very much in educational mu- space, and I wanted to go to uni. I wanted to get a degree. I actually wanted to be in architecture at that point in life. I was very good at that. Then, yeah, my mum passed away, and unfortunately, it took me a couple of years to actually learn to cope and deal with that. You can, yeah, allow these things to either make or break you. And I think I maybe took a couple of years to actually learn how to cope with my feelings, how to deal with that loss, and how then to build that into me going forwards. So I was very, after that point, I was very ambitious. I wanted to become a better version of myself. I wanted to learn and develop more. And yeah, I've kind of thrown that energy into everything I've done since then.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's a very heartfelt story. And it's interesting how, some of these events in our life, how they, I mean, obviously it's a very sad event and it's not something that we wish upon people, but this stuff happens. It's part of our life. And so, in terms of your self leadership around that, um, were there people around you? Was it a particular thing that was in you that kind of then woke you up to, learning from this experience and moving forward?
Yeah, it was more that self realization and that awareness piece of, I'm on a downward spiral here. I'm not actually doing anything with my life that's meaningful. And I actually read a book at the time called Who Moved the Cheese by Spencer Johnson. It's a very tiny book, but it helped me deal with change. And I've kind of adopted that fight or flight mindset now of, if I'm ever in those positions, then change is good, and adopt that change. I actually work really well in chaos situations, if that makes sense. When someone's looking for a solution or something's gone wrong, I'm very level headed and I can navigate that really well. And I think it is because of my appetite for change. I like change. Um, but yeah, not everyone's in that headspace.
And I think there's been attempts in the industry, so coming to the tech industry, around being able to deal with change. And it sounds like with your, merger and acquisitions and the company that you're in, that's part of the space that you're in. And the old saying, change is the only constant. I love that saying because it's kind of wrapped in on itself. Um, is being able to manage that. So you've embraced that change. And I think this is something that many leaders out there that can learn, but even engineers, just change is the thing that we need to embrace. And I think Agile attempted to do that in the industry. What do you think stops people from actually being able to embrace change? What's the thing?
Um, I, I think it's a mix of things. I think just human nature, we don't like change. We're not wired to always want change. We want consistency. We want habits. Even my wife, she's a creature of habit. She loves habits and she loves having a routine. I'm the complete opposite to that. That kind of feels like I'm getting forced into a routine where I like to mix it up. I like different. I like trying new things. I like trying new foods, for example. Yeah, and yeah, it's just experience, and you might like it, you might hate it, but you won't know until you try it. So
There's a saying that speaks to that, which I often use with leaders, is that, the way we do anything is the way we do everything. So, the fact that you're kind of open to change in your food and your diet actually has an implication on other areas of your life. So maybe that's something that you're embracing there. Change is the thing that you seek out and embrace.
Yeah, I think it's right. Yeah, and I think people always want perfection as well. It was something I learned really early on that building 80% is fine. Test, pivot, test, pivot. I'm a big fan of the Lean Startup book by Eric Ries. So yeah, that really helped me in the tech space because I've seen predecessors and mentors want to build perfection, and usually they go wrong with that because they're not listening to either the end user who's going to use the product. Um, Sometimes it's the wrong thing for the business because you build something at 100% and it's not actually what the business wants, or it's been misscoped or misaligned. Whereas building 80% allows you to pivot and allows you to be more agile and not waste time on the 20% that doesn't really matter.
And the problem is companies and teams fall into this trap all the time. They go for the 100%, and you don't need it. You know that, and sometimes that 20% is actually a huge bit of effort to get to that. To actually really polish it off. So yeah, I'm 100% with you. I'm as I've mentioned offline, I'm a pragmatic agilist. I'm not hell bent on on that way of thinking, but there is something to be learnt around there of just dancing with what is, and it's good enough, and let's keep moving forward.
Yeah, it has to be really practical.
Yeah,
I think that's the word I use internally. It just has to be practical, has to be simple. And don't get me wrong, I've been guilty in the past of over engineering products or solutions. But yeah, I think as long as you have that at your core as simplicity, I think that makes life a lot easier for everyone.
great, great. I've got a question here that I'd lined up just as a general introduction, but we're on the topic of your journey and what's kind of helped you. The question is that what's the most important feedback that you got from someone or something or the organization that was really impactful on you and then changed things? Because feedback loops are important.
Feedback's really important, and every enhancement or feature release we put out there as a team, we always make sure we build that feedback loop because we're not the end user, we're building it for someone else. So their feedback is key in that learning process. I guess myself, it was more self-learning, if I'm honest. When I was in the energy industry, I had a bit of imposter syndrome. I was in a department where I didn't feel like I could spread my wings. I felt maybe everyone else was far more intelligent than me, better at their jobs than me. And I missed an opportunity there to actually leave an impression and make a mark. And I think when I left that position, I made a promise to myself never to let that happen again. Regardless if I don't know a subject or if I'm not on paper more intelligent than the next person, I shouldn't let that put me off pushing my opinions forward and pushing my ideas forward. Because yeah, there's value in having difference of opinions in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes back to this idea of perfection. And I guess another way of looking at it is harmony. Harmony isn't always, it's not, it is something that exists, but it's not something that, actually the world is in a way quite a chaotic place. There's a lot of things that are interacting, bumping into each other, and to have that mindset and learn from it as well. So that's good. So Stephen, obviously you've going to mention that feedback loops are important. How do you? What's a real tangible way that you bring that into the space? What's in your leadership that makes that happen and it enhances that feedback?
Yeah, feedback's really important. Like I mentioned, we're building platforms for the end user, not for ourselves. And sometimes we can get hung up of trying to make it perfect for ourselves. So I encourage my team to always build in that feedback loop. An example of that is we've built a B2B reseller portal using composable e-commerce tech stack. And we've actually released that with a feedback loop to the end user and the end customer because we want to build a platform and shape it for their use, whatever makes life easier for them. And I think that's a real cool way to actually build product and build solutions by listening to that feedback and building out the roadmap based on that feedback. Sometimes companies and businesses, they think they know what their customers want without actually asking for the voice of the customer. So I'm a firm believer of always trying to get that feedback in anything we do. Like, if it's for the end customer or if it's for the end user, always have that circle back.
And how do you make that happen? What does that look like? If I could kind of like be a fly on the wall, is that like a workshop, or is that visiting them on site, or what?
Yeah, various things. So if it's a customer, it's typically like a survey that we send out or an NPS score. We will have touch points as well with those customers to make sure they're using the platform, utilizing it. We give them that training and awareness piece of, did you know you could do this? Or did you know you could do this? Our other customers find this really useful. Do you use this? And just making it more conversational, get that feedback. Because let's face it, not everyone has the time in the day as well to give you that feedback. So you need to make it interactive for them to give you feedback. And it can't be an essay. It needs to be short, sharp. And that increases your response rate.
It's something about making it frictionless. It's got to be frictionless.
Yeah, it does. Otherwise, you would just never get that feedback.
Yeah.
And sometimes it makes sense to actually go and see it. So like you said, workshops is really important. Show us how you use this process. Okay, well, we're thinking about making this change to this process. How does that fit in with your day-to-day? Does it make it easier? Does it make it harder? And again, yeah, it's about removing those barriers and making it less friction.
Yes. I always, because I'm a big fan of feedback. This is one of the reasons why I'm kind of homing in on the topic. And as leaders, we can fire that up. So often, I'll speak to people and say, like, what's really peeving you off? What's frustrating you? What parts of this are annoying the hell out of you? And then, and sometimes it's something that you can already help them with, and sometimes it's a change. Like very kind of small tweak. But yeah, I think it's important that we do adapt to the actual change that needs to happen, as opposed to thinking a change needs to happen, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to focus on tech for a bit, because you're kind of in the tech. You're a techie, and we're a CTO Confessions, so we're all about tech here. There you go. So what's a must have in your tech stack? What's a must have?
I'm going to say people, if I'm honest.
Yay! All right, I like it. Yes.
People, not necessarily with the right skill sets, but with the attitude and willingness to learn the right skill sets. We've been fortunate. We've made a decision really early on in the business. We want our own in-house developers, and that makes us able to change and be agile and scale the business. And I think that's been our biggest success, is having that in-house team. That the problem with working with third parties is typically us as a business, we don't know what we don't want until we see what we don't want. And my job is to make sure that is translated from a business point of view back to technical spec. But sometimes we get it wrong because we're either not close enough to the process, or the people we're working with can't articulate what they want. And again, it goes back to building 80%, because you want to build MVPs, you want to build tests and pilots to allow people to have that feedback and allow people to change it if it needs change. And working with in-house developers and in-house digital transformation teams really allows us to be agile and allow us to adapt to the market changes as well.
Yes, absolutely. And as part of that kind of driving, your developments or what have you, innovation comes to mind. Do you think things are moving too fast at the moment in tech, and we're not able to kind of keep up? There's something around, we seem to be speeding up, and it just seems to be getting faster and faster.
It does feel like AI is on the front foot of that. It's just driving forward. There's a new AI model every month at the moment with different capabilities. I think it will scare people because, again, change is scary. It's about learning the most important parts of these new technologies and seeing if it's a right fit for your business, especially that requirement piece. some CEOs will go, we need AI, let's spend money on AI, without actually understanding the context and understanding how it can work with people. So for example, with ourselves, we've actually put on a lot of educational workshops, so training and development, teaching people how AI works before going into the workshops. Of come to us with use cases, tell us what you do on a day-to-day basis where you think AI can actually help you. And that approach has really worked with ourselves, because we get solid use cases, then we get solid return of investments that we can measure, and we can actually make a difference to people's day-to-day jobs and roles, instead of just forcing AI on them. So we've got an AI enablement piece where we're teaching them the new technologies, teaching them how it can be used, and then they're going away with their own ideas, and they're coming back to the business with their own ideas rather than us forcing it on people. And I think that's a real clever way of actually doing an enablement piece.
That's really good. In fact, I saw something funny on social media where, like you have, like, we want something, we want AI and we want it now. And then it kind of goes on, and then it says, what do we want it for? And it's like, we don't know, And it's absolutely right. We're kind of going for this technology like it's going to solve all our problems that we don't even know that we've got problems with. It's just like, we need it. And everybody's trying to stick AI on every single badge and weave it in somehow. So it's really interesting to hear your approach, where what I heard was that you're prepping people to understand what AI is, or rather what the large language models are. And then that allows people, because some people think it's actually a form of intelligence. It's not. It's an average, or it's an ability to kind of collect information and give the probability of what it thinks is the right answer is, kind of thing. Well, that's my understanding of AI anyway. The LL models.
Yeah, they're very good at retrieval of information and maybe caveat that information.
Yes,
So
yeah.
yeah.
And it is impressive. It really is impressive stuff. Because and just so that you know, Stephen, I've mentioned a few times on the podcast that I actually started off at my electronics degree doing neural networks in the early days. So I'm really annoyed with myself, because if I'd have stuck with it, I think I'd be doing okay now. Maybe I could have been part of the OpenAI. I don't know, right? So I kind of left it, but it is pretty impressive. Even as an engineer, I'm really gobsmacked of what its capabilities of being able to retrieve information and then articulate it into a context that you're interested in a way that you understand very quickly.
It's making all our lives a lot easier, isn't it? If you know how to use those tools. I think that's the key bit, if you know how to use those tools effectively. So
Yes. So to all our audience out there, look to see how you can use it. Look to see use cases that other people are using. I often go to YouTube and go, people are always sharing their use cases, and I'm thinking, I didn't think of it like that. So yeah, absolutely. So I did have a question here around the AI craze, because we've got to talk about AI because it's in the space, it's everywhere. But in your sector, what difference is it making to your sector and the work that you do?
the work I do is making the team more efficient, because there's manual processes where we can now offload to AI agents, but it's only fully embedded in maybe the technical teams rather than the wider business yet. Again, we're still working on those use cases, still working on those return on investment pieces. But for me, it's about building that infrastructure to allow us to do those return on investment cases. One of the trials we're doing at the moment is how we can actually use it for onboarding salespeople. So we're actually creating an agent that taught on our data, the way we speak, the way we sound, all our technical products. So we sell parts for heavy earth moving machines, so products can get very technical very quick. And ultimately, we can't hire industry experts all the time to do the jobs in our space. There's just not enough of them. And we're exploring how we can use this now for onboarding, training, and development, and getting people up to a standard and a level where they are the product expert and they can deal with any inquiry from customers. Because sometimes the customer doesn't really know what they're looking for either. So we're exploring how do we have an interface where the customer can actually take a picture of the parts, send it in, and the AI can now analyze it, then suggest back to the agents what part that is, and if we've got it in stock, and the price and the availability around there. So it's about building these tools to help people do their jobs better. That's the way I see it.
Yes. And coming back to the feedback loop topic, how are you knowing that the products that you created are actually making life easier, making people more productive? Is there some feedback loop that you have there?
Yeah, it's that constant touch point during any project that we're working with AI to go. It's not about proof of concept. It's more about proof of confidence. Is it telling you the right thing? Is it solving your problem? So we build on that and constantly train the AI models that we're using on that information as well. So it's almost like a human in the loop method to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, you've got a business that's got lots of products and parts. I guess that's the sales part of it. But what about like for end customers in terms of predictive? Because there's a lot of AI is quite good at seeing patterns in data and what have you. Does it use as a kind of preventative tool as well to show where stock needs to be higher and there's going to be more of a need for this patterns, so to speak?
Yeah, we're already using those machine learning methods, building algorithms to tell us where we should stock what products, depending on demand spikes. And it will summarize back to us the value of stocking that product. Because obviously, in a perfect world, we want to be able to have a fill rate or an SL rate on all our items at 100%. But only the top 20 fast moving items probably contribute 80% to our revenue. So that there's a scale of opportunity cost there. So if we actually treat it quite smart and intelligent approach, we know that certain parts is fine to run out of stock on in certain locations because it doesn't drive revenue, and it would actually cost us more holding that stock in that location than it would us selling that stock because of how the variance in the demand spikes.
Beautiful, beautiful, fascinating. I'd love to see how that works because I get quite excited by this. We see this stuff can be quite laborious for a human being to kind of sit there and to go through the process. It just does it out of the box and it does it within seconds. So that's where I see the excitement in some of these tools. It makes us allow us to focus on other things which are more human and interactive and creative. So here we go. In your space and the journey that you've had, what's the thing that you're most proud of? What's the innovation or change that you've made that you think, do you know what? I need a badge for that.
I think the thing I'm most proud of is how scalable our tech stack is. So as I said, we're on an M&A journey at the moment. We're doing a lot of acquisitions, and our strategy is we will implement our tech stack straight away. So we've got that one source of truth, that one process alignment piece, and we can then start adding value to the acquisition we purchase. By doing it really quickly and straight away, we're removing any complexity further down the line. So I've seen businesses where, for example, I was speaking to someone, I won't name any names. They had 64 different ERP systems and 64 different ways of working across their group. And when I asked them, how do you tackle that? They just don't, because that project, every time they do an acquisition, that project is getting larger and larger in complexity and scale. And they just manage it by throwing people and money at it, which isn't our approach. We want to just make things nice and simple, integrate straight away. And then we can actually do that value add piece by driving the business that we bought for the reasons why we've bought it.
Yeah, impressive stuff. Love it, love it. So I want to come back to leadership. So I'm curious, do you think leaders are born or made?
I think they're made, if I'm honest. I'm a big advocate of leading by example. So, for example, this podcast, I made a conscious effort this year to throw myself into opportunities like this because I'm constantly at my team to say, you need to do more workshops, you need to be more people driven. And I'd need to take a leaf out of my own book and throw myself into these lead by example. Exactly.
Love it. And how are you enjoying it so far? We're on the podcast, so I'm gonna ask for some feedback loop on that. How are you doing so far? How are we doing?
No, we're doing well. Yeah, feel
It's a cheeky
comfortable.
question. It's a really cheeky question. Um, so I'm going to ask you some nice warm questions as we come to closing, part of the podcast now. We talked about your journey and how you've learned. Real kudos to you. You've picked yourself up, you become aware, and you're kind of driving that forward. And in fact, one of the things that we just speak about offline is everything comes from awareness. We have to be aware. So all you people out there, work on your awareness because it all comes from that. Otherwise, you're running on old programs and on old habits. So, become aware. Anything else that you would recommend to people in their journey towards leadership? And it doesn't mean that they're always going to end up in C-suite. We're all leaders at the end of the day, doing our work. What tips would you give? Any books, any films, any people in history that you would say, look this out and learn from it?
A brilliant book I like is Black Box Thinking by Matthew Sides. So I, I'm very much an advocate of failure is data. So analyze it, learn from it, improve. And if you can pass this on to people in your team, and that adoption of it's okay to make a mistake. It's not the end of the world. We've all made mistakes. It's that human element. But as long as you learn from it and you take something from that experience, I think that's the most important piece.
Yeah. There's something around being just open to the flow of what's happening. I'm getting very deep and quite probably out there a little bit, but we have these expectations of how we want things to go, but actually the world and the universe is going to do its thing. Just be with it, dance with it and learn from it. And often it'll open up doors, the opportunities will open up. You just got to be in the moment. So yeah, black box thinking was that.
Yeah, Black Box Thinking by Matthew Sides. Really
Right.
great
Good one.
book.
Any other books? Anything else that you'd like to share?
Maybe not in terms of books, but I would encourage that knowledge transfer. So for example, my team has a library. So we all have contributed to that library with books. And we encourage people to take those books away to work on themselves, learn new methods. And that's just that self-discovery, I think, is really important. Never give up on learning and development, because there's no end to it. We can all learn more, build more skills, and be better versions of ourselves. That's how I view it.
I love it. I love books. I always think that, an author has put their heart and soul into that book and they're offering it to you, and it's to be grateful for that, to say, do you know what can I learn from this? I often write in the front of my books why I'm reading a book, why I'm reading. So when I get bored of it or it gets lost, I go back to why I opened it in the first place. So it kind of realigns me and inspires me. So yeah, absolutely.
Might need to nick that idea.
So often I just think, do you know what, this book's really doing my head in. And often books that where I'm about to give up on them actually turn out to be what I call gateway books. They really get you thinking different. There's something around part of us resisting learning from that book. And I'm going to share a book here now. There was a book that I read, which it's nothing to do with tech, but Zorba the Greek. I don't know if you've read that at all. It's a book that really changed my life. And I really struggled with it during I'm reading it, but I got through to it and it changed me. It literally changed me. So it's one of what, it's interesting how sometimes we feel like resistant, that actually that's the thing that we need to push through. I'm going to offer you a wish now, from the tech genie. I'm going to pretend to be a genie coming out of some tech, oil lamp thingy. What would you wish for your leadership, for your industry, just from a tech perspective? What's your wish?
It's maybe not from a industry angle, but just from a social awareness angle. It is around integrations. For example, in the UK, we've got the NHS, brilliant foundation and brilliant organization, but we're all customers. And I think it's a failure that we've got to this point now where we don't have an app on our phone where we can check our medical records or book appointments or see test results. It needs to be all joined up for it to be successful and to be efficient. I think we as a civilization and as a human issue as well, we typically make decisions for the short and the here and now, and we think in days and weeks rather than years and decades. And I think to really progress and to really make change possible, we need to start thinking that long term, and we need policies and governments and politicians to come together to make that possible. Yeah, we're too short-mindedness at the moment, and that needs to change, I think.
I think you're right. It's interesting you're talking about NHS. We do have an app here because you're in Scotland, and here we do have an app that has some of those capabilities there. It's not quite there, but it is amazing that, you know, they're just not fully integrated. They're not interconnected as they could be, and that's where the magic appears. So yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, and in Scotland, they run the trust is 22 different organizations and with 22 different budgets. So you can imagine how disjointed that can get. And we're consumers. We're consumers at the end of the day. And I think that's where the private sector really works well, because they only invest money and time into things that work for their business and work for their end users.
Yes, yeah, good. So I'm going to work on that wish because I think it will do all of us good. So absolutely on that one. So as we come to the final full stop of our time together, unfortunately, Stephen, what would be your final key takeaway that you'd like to give to our tech leader audience as we part company?
Yeah, a good question. Put me on the spot there. I guess, yeah, in my space, your tech stack will always change, and it will change dozens of times, but your people will determine whether any of that works. So again, going back to the people angle, I think that's really important.
Beautiful. People first. Absolutely. What a beautiful note to finish on. Thank you for your time, Stephen. It's been wonderful having you on CTO Confessions.